It's a statement that every whiskey company in the world wants you to believe. Expensive whiskey equals better whiskey. Is that really the case, though? We're going to dive into this topic today, and I've got some serious thoughts about it. Let's go. How are y'all doing today? My name's Chris. Welcome back to Bourbinsane. Some bourbons are $30, some are $100, and now in today's market with the secondary market, some bourbons are well over $1,000. But just because you have an expensive price tag, does that mean it's truly a better whiskey than some stuff you can get at half the price or even a third of the price in some cases? Today I'm going to be talking about whether an expensive whiskey truly does equal a better whiskey or not. There's a lot of factors, a lot of layers that go into this and what drives pricing and quality in general. So I want to dive into that today, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of good expensive whiskey out there for sure, but can we get some replacements that are actually going to be affordable for all of us? So why does bourbon get expensive? And there's multiple layers and factors to this, but for me, the main reason and the main difference in price I see on the shelf is age. The older the bourbon, the older the whiskey, the more angel share there is. So the more lost whiskey they're getting in that barrel when they age it. Not only that, they have to sit on the product for a period of time. You know, your 10-year plus age statements, they're sitting on that barrel for 10 years, paying taxes on that barrel, and that drives price. So age statement is a big part of this. Second factor are the barrels themselves. These big companies like Buffalo Trace, Wild Turkey, even MGP, they've got thousands and thousands of barrels, and not every one of those barrels is going to be a honey barrel. You know, those are usually reserved for the single barrels or their higher end expressions. And that's why small batch bourbons exist, so that these distilleries can blend in, I guess, lesser quality barrels, if you will, to still get the flavor profile they want with some of those better barrels. And that can definitely drive pricing. They've got some barrels that just aren't that good, but they still have to use them. They still have to put them into supply. The third factor I see driving prices are limited releases or limited supplies. So a lot of distilleries are using that label now, or putting out these types of releases saying it's limited supply, a limited edition version. And there may be some truth to that. You know, as just mentioned in the previous one, some of these honey barrels don't exist everywhere. You know, you may have a limited amount of a good amount of barrels. Think about your Buffalo Trace Antique Collection. I mean, those are the best barrels, theoretically at least, coming out of Buffalo Trace every year. You don't have that many of them, even if you do age them in the perfect part of the rickhouse, in the right rickhouse with the right conditions you want as a master distiller. So driving price, I guess, expense is going to be definitely limited supply and limited releases, which every new release nowadays, it seems to be a limited edition, just to kind of be a buzzword, I think, for consumers. Last main thing I see driving price is hype around bottles. Every time a distillery puts out a new release, just now hitting King of Kentucky's hitting around here in Michigan, it immediately shows up on the secondary market with ridiculous prices. People are posting all over Facebook, Instagram, everything, trying to just show what they got or just resell it, honestly. I don't see many people cracking these and drinking them, which is very sad. And that's really hurting the bourbon market and driving prices up like crazy. Just because something has a super high, I guess, secondary value does not mean it's necessarily the best thing out there. Think about your Pappies. They're always going to be super, super inflated. Old Rip 10 is like $1,000, you know, on secondary. There's no way it drinks near that at all. You know, it just doesn't. You know, you can get a replacement bottle for much, much better than that at literally a tenth of the price, probably $100 less. So hype is what drives a lot of this as well for us as consumers. And distillers know that too. They know these limited releases are going to push higher values. There's going to be a hype point about it on social media and all these different platforms with content creators in general. So that definitely can hurt the bourbon market overall for us that are just trying to at least buy bottles to drink them. So here's the real question. Does more expensive bourbon actually equal better bourbon? And the answer is sometimes. I wish it was a yes or no, but it's really not. I've had it both ways. I've had some extremely limited rare releases that were just out of this world, blow your mind whiskeys. And again, I go back to like the BTAC stuff I've had. You know, a lot of their releases, the William LaRue Wellers, the George T. Staggs on their good years. I mean, they are mind-changing or life-changing whiskeys is what I call them. You can try some things like that. Or maybe you have been in whiskey for a while. You've tried some things like that, and you're like, wow, it changes your perspective on what a whiskey should be and what it had the potential for what it could be. So absolutely, some of the high-priced stuff, and there's a reason some of them are hyped up like they are, because they are that good. But then we got other things that just get pushed by social media, pushed by distillers that really aren't that good, and they still have a premium price tag, but they don't drink anywhere near that. I think of something like a Booker's. You know, it's always got a $100 plus price tag, only about 6 years. Flavors are good, but I'd rather get a Wild Turkey Rare Breed all day. I mean, almost double the age and probably more delicious for me. So the big question all of us consumers want to know, what is that sweet spot in bourbon right now? For me, it's about $50. So let's say $40 to $80. When you get below 40, I mean, you get your budget, your daily drinkers that are good, but they're really not going to push for that higher quality, some of the higher end $100 plus releases that you'd find. Between 40 and 80 though, we've got a whole bunch of good bottles that would qualify. I just mentioned one with the Rare Breed. One of the most underrated, affordable barrel proofs on the market. Still coming out of Wild Turkey. Another one that always pushes even some higher end stuff for me are the Russell's Reserve single barrels. I would say this is more 3 to 4 years before, in the past when these releases came out. Nowadays I'm only seeing about 8-year picks on those. They're still good, but they just don't have the depth and complexity that some of those older picks had that I've had before. They still push for $100 plus bottles. I think like compared to a Michter's 10-year. Of course, it's higher proof, being in the Russell's Reserve single barrel, but I will almost always pick that versus it, probably just because of the proof point and flavor profile I get in general, even though it may be a few years younger. And that, of course, is going to be about half the price or a third of the price of an M10, for example. Not to say I don't like M10s. That's one of my go-tos, and I have a whole bunch of them. But I have a bourbon problem. I have a bourbon problem, so that's fine. So what are you really paying for with a lot of these expensive or overpriced bourbons? Rarity is the first thing. It's a limited release, as mentioned. Hard to find. There's not many of them. If you get lucky enough to stumble into one, it's almost like you have to buy it because you're never going to see it again. And that's really tough. Next is the brand name and collectability. I mean, go back to your BTAC like we were just talking about, or the Pappy name. That Pappy name alone is going to carry much more value, much more weight because of its history, its reputation in the bourbon community, and you're paying for high-end names quite often. Doesn't mean it's not a bad whiskey necessarily, but many other options, more affordable you can get than having to pay almost $1,000 for some stuff. And then hype in the secondary market. I mentioned this before. Both the hype and secondary together really do drive prices like crazy. I never used to think it was an issue until I see my retailers these days having to list things at secondary, or according to them, having to list things at secondary prices because they know people are just going to buy them and flip them right away. Gone are the days where you can make relationships with those stores. At least me, I've been trying with multiple stores local here in Michigan. It's tough. Even though I do this and I open my bottles, they know that they have to mark them almost secondary or more in some cases, just to prevent people from buying them and flipping them. It's really sad, really crazy. And I wish there was a way to fix that. I don't know if there will be, short of just trying to establish relationships with people Hopefully those of you that have been in the bourbon world a while, you still have some of those relationships with people or store owners and that will hopefully help you in the long run because I'm a sipper, not a flipper. So in the grand scheme of things, is expensive bourbon a scam? Yes and no. I mean, it's really up to you. It really is. There are some expensive bourbons I love. I mentioned a whole bunch of them already today, and there's a reason they're listed at the price they are in those cases. And then there's some that are just marked up terrible just because of a name or brand or label they have on their bottle. And that's what I can't get on board with. So I want to hear from you guys. Do you have any of those expensive, super expensive bourbons or whiskeys that you just absolutely love and you are like, hey, I will pay secondary for this because I love it that much? Or if not, what are the replacement bottles that you guys look for at a more affordable price instead of reaching for those super expensive labels that you do find on the shelf? I appreciate you guys watching today. Give me your feedback on this video. Want to hear if you agree with the things I came up with, or I want to hear extra things also that you think go into expensive pricing and why the market is the way it is now. Appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you soon. Stay insane.